Kia ora travel champs, how's it going? Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about what are we talking about? What's the video? I forgot.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Kia ora fellow travellers, how are we doing? Welcome to Budgeting Borders. Today we're going to be talking about how to save money and live as cheaply as possible while you're in Australia. Let's get into the video. Arrive in Australia, you're going to have to find yourself some accommodation. And accommodation here can be very expensive. One day, you're going to open up your wallet and all your money is just floating away. That's why a lot of backpackers tend to go to hostels. They're usually cheaper than anywhere else. They're a great place to meet other travelers, make some friends, be social. And a good thing about hostels is you can often volunteer as a worker in these hostels. So the way that works is for maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, 2 or 3 days a week, you get free accommodation. Sometimes you get free breakfast, sometimes free laundry. It all depends on the hostel. But this is a great way to save some money because you just have to work, like I said, a couple days a week and you get free accommodation. And this can really help while you're trying to find work. If it's taking you a bit longer than you thought to find a job, then this is a great way to just save a bit of extra cash. Another good thing about hostels, they often have a job boards posted somewhere in the hostel, and you can go to that place. They'll have listings for jobs or other services, and you can maybe find yourself a job through that. Also, hostels often have a free box or a free shelf where things that people have left behind or forgotten, they put there, and then you can go along, have a look through it. There might be, a pair of shoes that you really like that you can take. I have found so much stuff in these free boxes, it's unbelievable. I've gotten waterproof jackets, tents, I even got an almost brand new pair of $150 construction work boots. So that was a great find. So keep an eye out for those. Really good. If you're on a budget like me, free stuff is always great. So a lot of people tend to only stay in hostels for a couple weeks, maybe a month or so. But if you're trying to live cheaply, you can stay as long as you like with some hostels. I've been living in the hostel that I live in Australia for about 6 months now, and I could have moved out. I could have found somewhere that's a little bit more expensive but more private. But for me, because I'm just trying to save as much money as possible, I have just stayed in the hostel. There are downsides to this. Obviously, living with a whole bunch of random people can be rather annoying. You do get really loud, drunk, obnoxious people occasionally. One of the worst things I find is the kitchen that I have in my hostel is not huge, and these sometimes 20 or 30 people trying to cook food at the same time. There's hot pans flying everywhere, you're bumping into people. It's not always nice, but to save money, I'll do whatever it takes. So another option you could do is find a house share. House shares can be good because they're not often that much more expensive, and you get usually your own private room. You're sharing a house with maybe 3 or 4 people. If you're lucky enough to have friends in the place that you are, you can find a house share with your friends. Keep in mind, when you are looking for a house share or a rental apartments, it might say $150 or $200 a week, but that probably won't include power or electricity, and sometimes it won't include water as well. So there might be extra things. Also things like Wi-Fi. If you haven't got a good mobile plan, you'll have to get Wi-Fi for your house. That's going to cost you extra. So they all add up, so just make sure you keep that in mind when you're planning your budget, and when you're trying to find a place to live, you factor in all those other bills that you might have. With house shares, generally you're going to be paying between about $150 anywhere to $300 or $400 or even more a week, depending on how big the house is, if you've got a garden or not, how many bathrooms it has. So just keep that in mind. They can be a bit more expensive, but usually you get what you pay for. Apartments work pretty much the same way, but they're usually a bit smaller, and they're in an apartment building. Often these apartments have a gym or a pool that you get access to as well, so they can be a good option. They are sometimes a little bit more expensive. A friend of mine stays in an apartment building that has a pool and a gym, and he pays, I believe, about $200 a week for a 2-bedroom apartment. So he pays $200 a week, and the person in the other room pays $200 a week. He gets access to the pool and the gym, so it's a pretty decent place, and he's on one of the top floors. He's got a great view of the city, So make sure you look around. I'll put some links in the description to a few websites where you can find house shares, hostels, apartments, all sorts of different accommodation, and then you can make the decision whatever best suits you. The next expense that you're going to have is food. Food in Australia from a restaurant can be rather expensive. So if you're trying to save money, try to avoid restaurants. Occasionally you can find some little cheap places, you know, a little corner shop or something that has decent food for decent price, and that would be great if you're lucky enough to find one of those. About 5 minutes from my hostel is a nice little Japanese restaurant. They serve a decent amount of rice with some chicken, a little bowl of miso soup for, I think it's about $9 Australian. So that's pretty good price for a pretty decent meal. But if you're trying to save money, you want to cook for yourself. Places like Woolworths and Coles are the two biggest shopping centres in Australia. They have usually the best deals. They've got a lot of promotions on. If you go into the store, they'll have, you know, microwave pizza for $7 down to $3 every now and then. So keep an eye out for those promotions. If you just plan your meals around the promotions at Woolworths and Coles, you can often save yourself a lot of money when you're cooking. Also, some smaller supermarkets, like the IGAs as they're called, or bakeries and butchers, at the end of the day, often they will have sales because they don't want to throw away and waste food. So if you go in around, you know, 5, 6, 7 o'clock just before they're closing, they often have really cheap discounts because they don't want to just waste food. So check out the different shops around your area. You never know what bargains you're going to find. Transport in Australia, it's not expensive, but it's also not cheap. If you haven't found a job yet, or you're only volunteering in a hostel and you're not making any money, traveling around on trains and buses can be quite expensive. In general, a bus trip, for an hour might cost you $4 to $5 Australian. A train maybe 5 or 6. It just depends on the city and depends how far you're going. What I suggest is getting yourself a local bus card. This is mine from Perth. It's just called a Transperth card. This will let you ride the buses, the ferries and the trains for a little bit cheaper than if you pay with cash, and it's just easier. Often if you're on a bus, they won't let you pay with a large note because they don't have change. So if you haven't got exact change, you might not be able to ride the bus. Trains also, they don't take cash, so you have to have one of these to ride the trains. The ferries, most of the ferries as well, you have to have one of these cards. So get yourself one of these if you're planning on being in that city for a while. Once you've got that, you'll be able to travel around the city without paying too much. Other options are, there's ride shares like Uber, and Ola is another big one, but they're a little bit more expensive. They often have promotions, so if you're just signing up with Uber or just signing up with Ola, they might have a promotion where you get 50% off your first 5 rides or something like that. So if you want to do that, that's always a good option. Living off promotions is always a good thing to do if you're trying to save money. I try and do it as much as possible. Other expenses you might have while you're in Australia are things like your mobile phone bill. If you're going to be in Australia for a while, you're going to want to get yourself a SIM card. The 3 main companies are Telstra, Vodafone and Optus. They've all got their own plans, they've all got pros and cons to all of them. Telstra in general has the best coverage range. So if you're going to be doing lots of camping, or you're going to be going on hikes, away from the cities in the middle of the bush or the middle of the desert, if you're working a fly-in, fly-out job on the mining sites, you're not going to have a lot of coverage with the other companies. Telstra is going to be your best bet to get the best coverage in those sort of rural areas. In saying that, I'm not a big fan of Telstra personally. I've had pretty bad experiences with their customer service. They don't tend to be very helpful. They get a lot of bad reviews from other people as well. It's not just me saying that. Also, their app that you use, like most mobile phone companies have an app to use to top up your phone bill or change your plan, whatever you want to do. Their app it doesn't give you options like changing your plan or topping up. Sometimes can be a bit difficult. What I recommend you do to save yourself some money is get a third-party SIM card. Now if you go to a supermarket like Woolworths or Coles again, they'll have a shelf with a bunch of different SIM cards, and if you look for ones that are not from those 3 big companies, they'll have way better plans, a lot cheaper, usually sort of more data for less money. Personally, I use a lot of data, so I need a 50 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes or more because the place I live has really bad Wi-Fi. So I got myself, it's a company called Amasim. I'll link in the description below a few different websites a few different companies that you can use. I found Amasim to have the best plans for me personally. They had a lot of data for a cheap price. They were really easy to use. So if you're trying to find a SIM cards and you don't want to stick with one of those big expensive brands, then go for one of the cheaper ones. They're going to be your best options. Another tip for saving money in Australia: if you're a smoker, stop smoking. Cigarettes in Australia are incredibly expensive. They put a lot of tax on them, so a pack of 20 cigarettes costs you about 30 Australian dollars. So if you want to quit smoking and you want to save money, do it now while you're in Australia, because it will cost you a lot to keep smoking here. Another great way to make some extra money if you're willing to do it, it is a little bit dirty, is recycling. In Australia, in some cities, they have these machines where you put in a beer can or a beer bottle or any sort of bottle that has the 10-cent recyclable sticker on it, and they will give you money for it. So you come along with a big bag of bottles that you've collected from, sometimes your hostel has recycle bins. You can just go in and take out all the plastic bottles that you can recycle. You take your bottles and your cans to the machines, put them in one by one, and at the end of it, it prints off a little ticket. You take that ticket to a supermarket and they will give you cash. You get about, I think it's 10 cents for every bottle or can that you put in, and it is a really, really good way to make some money. If you find bottles that say you can get a refund, but the machine doesn't take it, there's other places you can go as well. And a lot of people don't realize this. So for example, they've got these little things in Australia called Yakult. It's like a protein yogurt shot thing. It's really weird. I don't really enjoy them, but they're quite popular, and they say on the bottle you can get a 10-cent refund for it. But when you put them in the machine, it doesn't work. And when I was doing this, a lot of people would come with hundreds of these bottles. They tried to put it in the machine, it didn't work, and they would leave that bag filled with those bottles just sitting there. I would take it to the actual recycling depot and give it to them, and then they would give me 10 cents for every one of those bottles. When I was doing this, I was making between $200 and $300 a week extra just by recycling these bottles. I would go around the recycling bins in my hostel and pick up any bottles that were recyclable. I'd go around my neighborhood and pick up any bottles that I'd found. And while I was working on either construction sites, or wherever I was working, I would go around and I would pick up extra bottles and cans that I found lying around. I'd put them in my truck. Once a week, I'd go to the recycling depot, hand them all over, and I would get between $200 and $300 a week extra. It is a really good way to make money. It's pretty easy. It is a little bit dirty, some people don't like the idea of going through bins. They think it's, scummy or trashy or whatever. But if you're really trying to make as much money as you can and you don't mind looking like a fool sometimes, cannot recommend this more. I actually worked for the company, I used to work for the company that had these machines, that run the machines, and that's how I found out about it. My job was to actually go and fix the machines and clean the machines, and that's how I heard about these machines, and that's when I started recycling and doing it myself. Because while I was driving around fixing those machines, I'd find bottles that people had left by the machines that they thought didn't work. I'd collect them, wait to the end of the week, and then take them to the actual recycling depot. If that's something you're interested in, I'll put a link in the description to the company that has the machines, and I'll put a few different depots for every city, or for all the major cities, where you can actually take these recycling bottles back to. Anyway guys, that's all I've got for you today. If you think I've missed out on anything, or you've got any other tips that you recommend, write them down in the comments below and I'll have a look. Don't forget to like and subscribe, ring that notification bell for the next video that's coming your way. Bye! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos related to travel and work.